Hello, Caesars, and welcome back to another episode of my first season. Today's guest has led an extraordinary life filled with adventure, artistry, and performance. She began her journey with Club Med in 2010, debuting as a circus geo in Punta Cana, and continued her path across multiple seasons until 2015. Her talents then took her to the high seas as an acrobat with Royal Caribbean Cruises, and later to Dubai, where she spent 4 years performing professionally. Most impressively, she flew high as a bateau flyer in the world-renowned Cirque du Soleil show O in Las Vegas for 3 years. Her story began even earlier, at just 6 years old, when she first stepped onto the trapeze at Club Med Sandpiper. Joining us all the way from Toronto, Canada, please welcome the incredibly talented and fearless Elisa Tauro. Hey, Elisa, how are you?
Hi, Greg. How are you? Thank you for having me.
No, thanks for saying yes. I'm very grateful you did. Not many people do, so thank you. And man, do we have a lot to cover because you've led quite the incredible life. I guess I'd like to start with when I mentioned 6 years old. You kind of knew Bob Christians back in those days. You went to
Yeah,
summer camp. Was Aranyo there, like Club Med legend Aranyo? Tell me a bit about both those early days.
I come from a family with four children, including myself, and my parents loved to do activities. So when they found Club Med and saw there was a kids club and all these activities, they're like, this seems like the perfect thing. And right away, I fell in love with flying trapeze. And this is back in the old days when we would do a kids circus show. So I think I did double trapeze back then. And my mom's story that she always tells me is after the first show, I ran up to my mom and I was so excited. And I said, Mom, I can't wait to do it again. And I think that's where it all started. And my parents actually fell in love with flying trapeze as well. So they would be there every day. And that's what started us. We would try and go to Club Med almost every year. And it just became like my passion, my big love. And Bob Christian was there. A lot of like circus OGs, Batman, Aranyo, Polito. There's so many, and they
Right.
all had a huge impact on me. And luckily, actually, funny enough, Aranyo and Jody were his wife. I saw them as kids. I loved them. Jody worked in the boutique at the time. I ended up working with Aranyo at a summer camp in, I believe it was 2015. And at that camp was another XGO, Rodrigo, and another XGO, Michael Vial. So it was kind of cool to come full circle from seeing these guys as like older, cool GOs and then working together.
Okay. So before you go actually apply to Club Med, I believe you went to University of Toronto. And what did you study there?
I went to University of Toronto after a flying trapeze accident, actually. I fell and broke my hand and realized, oh, maybe I need to have a backup just in case something like this happens where I can't use my body. So in 2012, I went to University of Toronto and studied kinesiology.
Okay. Wow.
I didn't graduate though,
Okay. Hey, I'm still in school doing a part-time degree in English literature, so there's always time, trust me.
right?
And one day I'll finish. Okay.
Well, I did leave to go pursue performing actually. So I feel like it was for a good reason that I didn't finish.
Okay. So now at what point though did you start to say, hey, maybe I'll send in a resume to Club Ed, and how did you do that?
So, how that happened, interestingly enough, the last time we had gone to Club Med as a family, I was about 16 years old, and the last place was Punta Cana. And actually, my sister and I were caught trying to sneak out of our rooms and go dance at the disco. And then after that, my dad was like, "Okay, you guys are too old for this now. We're done." And then it was funny that Punta Cana was the first Club Med I worked at, but I had originally gone to University of Laurier for 1 year and I did cheerleading there. And I was 18 and just realized, and I studied biology, but I quickly realized I wasn't ready for university. So I came home and I was hanging out, and my mom was trying to convince me to do something. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. So one day she sat me down. She said, "Okay, Lisa, before you leave the house today, I want you to apply to Club Med." I'm like, "No, I don't think I want to go do that." She's like, "Jess, you had so much fun when we were kids. You did flying trapeze. It'd be a great opportunity to, stay active. So my mom actually, don't want to say forced, but told me to apply. And that is how I ended up going to Club Med and starting my circus life, career, everything.
All right. So 2010 brings us to Punta Cana, chef de
Yeah.
village. I think you had two chefs, Eyal and Abdel Osmani, right? During that time there.
Yeah. It was only supposed to be one season. I was only supposed to go for 6 months. And then I met my first boyfriend. I fell in love with circus and I ended up staying for a year. And I didn't really want to come home after that. So
Was it different going from GM to GO?
quite different. But also, I feel like having gone there as a child, I knew what to expect in a way, the crazy signs, the lifestyle. Well, maybe not the lifestyle so much, but just the energy of what it's like to be a GO and what it takes. And I loved it.
Would you like to share any stories or anecdotes from this season? If
I was in the best shape of my life in my first season, I have to say. Like, I know I've done all the other shows, but first season we trained so hard. And the chief of circus, Vitor, tough Brazilian guy, I cried almost every day. We would just train like animals, when you're first swinging on a trapeze, pulling yourself up on silks, like your hands rip. It's a lot. But I think one of the funniest things was my whole circus team was Brazilian. And then Vitor's wife at the time, Millie, who was my older sister at Club Med, her and I were attached at the hip, but she spoke Portuguese as well. So they would have Brazilian night with a few of the other Brazilian GOs. And they said, "Oh, well, Lisa, you're part of the circus team. You're one of us. So you have to be on, like, do Brazilian night." I'm like, well, I don't know capoeira and I definitely don't know how to samba. So I think one of my most embarrassing moments of first season was having to do the Brazilian night with all these Brazilians just dancing samba. And I was just standing there thinking, what am I doing? This is a nightmare. And I would just try and save it by doing some handstands when we do capoeira and just flip around. And
could you speak any Portuguese?
I learned to understand it. My family is Italian, so I know a bit of Italian, and being Canadian, a little bit of French, but nothing enough to have a conversation. And that was what I learned definitely first season is Punta Cana summertime. It's a lot of French guests and just having to like Club Med style where you just have to strike up a conversation with someone, have a meal with them. If you don't want to sit in silence, you kind of have to just force yourself to speak another language. Like learn very quickly how to at least have conversational French and Portuguese. I was able to understand it because whenever the team would start speaking Portuguese, I would want to know what they're saying. So
Speaking of French, did you go to Montreal after the season for a festival?
I did. When I finished Club Med, I thought, okay, well, what can I do after performing? I love flying trapeze. And every summer, Montreal has a circus festival, Complètement du Cirque. And Simon Fortin, he
Yes,
brought me there.
Simons. Shout out Simon Says. Yeah.
Yeah,
I worked with him in Cancun for a year. So yeah, Simon. Shout out
yeah.
Simon.
He hired me for my first job, and that was doing the summer festival. We were right in the viewport, and we did a flying trapeze show, which was great. So much fun to perform. Like we set up a trapeze right in the old port, and it was, yeah, so much fun.
All right. And then after this, do you call Club Ed and say, hey, I'm available?
During my first season in Club Med, we had Club Med artists come. They were all artists at Lanuba in Orlando, one of the Cirque du Soleil shows. It was Anthony Pages, Christina, and Rob Dawson, and they were all flying trapeze artists. So they came there and they spent a week. We trained with them. It was great. And then I stayed in touch with them. And Anthony Pages, his family, they're the Flying Pages, and they have a traveling trapeze show that goes all over the States, like old trapeze families. And so they hired me, but they toured in the States and I'm Canadian. I didn't have a visa or anything. So I just crossed the border, left my car on a fairground, and I traveled with them, like, old traditional circus style. So going to fairgrounds, setting up the trapeze, living in a trailer, taking it all down, loading the truck, and driving to the next city. And I did that for a few months. up until I fell during a training and broke my hand and had to go home, which eventually led me to realizing I need a backup plan. And I went back to school.
And then do you go as a Club Med artist to Turks at one point?
Summer after I went back to school, I ended up going to Turks. I was supposed to do a Club Med artist about 2 weeks. I think it was about 2 weeks. And then I went there. I'm like, oh, Turks is amazing. I don't want to leave. Why would I go back to Toronto for the summer? And the new chef de village, Mike Clark, he just came in. He said, well, Lisa, the circus team is full for the season. But if you really want to stay, because Manny, okay, now I think I'm going in a big circle, but just to give some context, Manny was my circus partner in my second season in Punta Cana. And him and I did duo silks, duo trapeze. We trained everything together. So I had actually gone back to Punta Cana once as a Club Med artist, so him and I could perform together. But he was in Turks and told me to come down. So him and I had so many acts together. So Mike was like, well, you know what? Circus team is full. But if you want to stay for the summer, there's a bar position that's open up. Do you have any bartending experience? And I said, I worked at a wing bar in Toronto like years ago. Basically, I was pouring beer at this wing place. But I'm like, yeah, I can do it. Sure. Very little bar experience, but I made it work. And I would work in the bar all day. And then at night, go do the shows or find time to train and kind of I called myself a flying bartender.
What? A flying beverage concoctionist.
Yeah, it was a bit of a hybrid position, but it was awesome. I didn't know how to make a lot of classic cocktails. So, I mean, I knew how to do a mojito, the basics, but whenever I found a trick that whenever someone would ask me for a cocktail that I didn't know, I would just suggest, oh, you know what? I have this great cocktail called a Flying Elisa or a Turk Sunset. And those would be my two like signature cocktails that I knew how to make. And I would just try and hand those off.
What did you throw in the Flying Elisa? What was in it?
I think I like the color purple. So I know I put vodka, probably blue curacao. It was super sweet. Honestly, now when I think about it, it would have been disgusting. But a ton of vodka, ton of vodka, blue curacao, probably some grenadine and soda water.
Sounds good for me.
It's actually not that bad. I might have done Sprite instead of soda water. I think I'm saying soda water because that's what I would prefer now.
All right. Now, when these shows that you do at night, did they involve any capoeira or Brazilian dancing again? Or
No,
no?
thankfully we
Okay.
left that in Punta
Okay.
Cana. We did a lot of fun shows in Turk, so it was the shows are part of like the best part. That's when the GOs get to hang out, have fun, and I will say in all my years of circ and professional performing, Club Med is probably was one of the most rewarding places to perform just because it's special to look out into the crowd and actually see people that you know all the time. These are people that would come try trapeze every day, their kids would be trying. And so they also have experienced it or struggled with it. So they appreciate it that much more. And there's something very intimate and special about performing for people you know, because as you get into the bigger shows, it's complete strangers. It's bigger crowds for sure and a bigger audience, but performing for like looking out and seeing people, making eye contact, people you know is very special.
What happens after this season? Like, where do you go next?
So then I did another summer back in Punta. And then after that, when I finished that second school year, I decided to leave university and pursue performing as a career. And, that's kind of that awkward time when you work with contracts of how do you just start messaging everybody you know in the industry, applying everywhere. You put together a video instead of really having a paper resume. You have a video of yourself, a video compilation of all the tricks you've done, all your performing. And a friend of mine reached out and said, do you still do trampoline? Because I did trampoline competitively in high school. And I said, kind of, not really. I hadn't jumped on a trampoline in years. They said, well, Royal Caribbean's looking for a trampolinist, a generalist, kind of acrobat. I think they need someone ASAP. Are you available in the next like 2 weeks? I said, Sure. And so it was one of those very quick spur of the moment, like, Mom, they want me to like join Royal Caribbean for an 8-month contract. And so I'm like, I'm going. And within, I think, 2 weeks, I'd left for Fort Lauderdale and went on the cruise ship.
Okay, now hold up. You competed in trampoline in high school?
Yes. So
Your high school
in
had in Canada had a trampoline team.
no,
No? Oh, okay.
no, I wish what we had was I did gymnastics as a child from about 5 years old to 10. My mom took me out of it. I would get distracted. I wasn't that into it. The hours were very demanding. And for a 10-year-old to do like 25 hours in the gym was just ridiculous. So I stopped. And then we would go to Club Med. And then I went to a summer camp. I would train downtown. I think Decker Ladouceur has been mentioned on a few podcasts, but he had a Toronto School of Circus Arts in the city, and I would go train there, where I actually trained with a lot of ex-GOs like Josh Munden, David Spark.
Randy
And
Hobbs?
so, no, Brandy, I didn't meet until later on, and that's another. But
Okay.
yeah, Randy's awesome. All the Newfoundland boys, actually, they're all the best.
Okay. Now, what's it like though, being on a ship and working on a ship, I guess, compared to now that you can compare it to Club Med? Because I've seen the quarters are pretty tight, right? So you got to get used to, I guess,
It's
being on the
wavy.
sea, wavy, not much space, right? Like I've heard people like their suitcase goes where their pillow is. I mean, what's it like?
So unless you were a specialist in one of the shows, which I was just a generalist, you have a roommate and you have bunk beds. And in the bathroom, you can literally sit on the toilet, shower, and brush your teeth at the same time. If like
Whoa,
that's like just to give you an
efficient.
idea of how small it is,
That's efficient.
it was like a cupboard. But
Okay.
I will say I had the best sleeps because you're actually, well, there's no windows, there's no portholes. So you're below sea level at the bottom of the ship, but it's pitch black in the rooms and you can slightly feel the boat rocking. So it's kind of like you're being rocked to sleep.
Okay. What ports of call were you doing?
2 Caribbean tours. We would do Bahamas, Cancun. No, sorry, Bahamas, Cozumel. We'd go to Jamaica, Saint Martin, a few other stops. And then we crossed the Atlantic and did a European run, which was for me the best ever. We went to Italy, France, Spain. That was a great experience. Performing on a cruise ship was a little bit difficult. It was actually one of the biggest changes from Club Med to cruise ships was that you didn't have any interactions with the guests on the cruise ship. I mean, unless you went to the restaurants that were there, that we were allowed to go to some of the restaurants, but you had zero interaction with any of the guests. So it was very different in that sense, going from Club Med, where it's like guests all the time, breakfast, lunch, dinner. And then on the cruise ship, you just hang out with whoever your friends are, and you kind of have more of a life in a way. Well, a cruise ship life. You're just around all the other crew members.
Back in Canada, you would do trapeze on solid ground. So now what's it like doing trapeze on a moving ship?
Well, there was
Sorry,
no
trapeze. I
trapeze
mean
actually.
trampoline. Sorry, trampoline. Sorry.
It was rough sometimes when the boat was really rocking. At the time, I was on the largest cruise ship in the world. So they would have stabilizers, but sometimes I did 2 shows on that ship. There was a theater show and we did a pool show, which was awesome. The pool was shaped like a jelly bean and we had high divers. The stage would flip and turn into a trampoline. So we would jump on the trampoline and jump into the water. But if the boat's rocking and you think you're jumping straight. Next thing you know, you jump and you're going off in another direction. So it took some practice and we'd have to cancel some shows, but it was an adventure.
Now, do you go to Dubai after your contract is up with Royal Caribbean?
Actually, I did one more summer camp in 2015, and oh no, actually, I did. So Cirque du Soleil and Club Med kind of merged, and they opened up the huge circus school in Punta Cana, Creative, yeah. And so I went just after it had opened in the fall of 2015.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that's where I met Randy. So then I went from being a GO to a GC, which was also very different.
What's a GC?
Gentil circassien.
Oh, okay.
So it's like yeah,
okay, I didn't know that.
another hybrid.
Yeah, okay. So you spent a couple of months there, I guess.
Hmm.
All right. And then is it because you make that connection with Cirque du Soleil, or sorry, how did you find out about performing in Dubai? I guess I'm getting at.
So Dubai, I was actually in Italy, vacationing with some friends after Club Med. I had applied to the show, like Franco Dragone. He's created a lot of Cirque shows. Then he branched out and made a lot of his own shows. And he was creating the show in Dubai. And I was all my gigs have been last minute hirings. So, like my cruise ship job, I was vacationing in Dubai and someone had dropped out. I didn't audition for La Pearl. Someone had dropped out last minute or there was a visa issue. And I think I was next in line. So I got a phone call when I was in Italy saying, "Hi, Elisa, are you still interested in La Pearl in Dubai?" Of course I am. They're like, are you available in 2 weeks? It was another like 2 week stint. And this was, job of a lifetime. This is a big theater show. It's a brand, I do it get to a creation and it's a Franco Dragone. So I bought the next flight home, went to Toronto, packed all my bags, and I was in Dubai within 2 weeks.
What kind of artist are you there? Like what are you performing?
And I went as a flyer. We were supposed to have we were supposed to have this act called like Fixed Cradle, and we also had Russian Cradle there. But those structures that was supposed to, because it was a brand new show, they built the theater, it was a water show. So they had to design all these different acts and they brought everyone to do all these special acts. But turns out after the theater was built and they actually rigged everything, all these numbers. It wasn't possible to set them up during the show, or rigging was too complicated. So what we all had gone there for was cut. So we were all just kind of generalists. But during creation of that show, I fell during a training and I actually fractured my neck.
Okay.
So yeah, that put a pause on the show for a bit. So I missed the opening day of that show. I didn't need surgery or anything, but I had to go home and I was in a neck brace for about 2 months. But retiring wasn't really an option. Like I wanted to get back into it. It was just a bit of a setback. And then I went back and we did in that show, I did diving, we did hoop. The show really evolved as it opened and as time went on. It was almost a shell of a show when we opened, and then we kept working on it and adding acts. So it was always changing. So kind of kept everything exciting, and you would constantly train, and the show got better and better up until I think we had it in a really great spot, and then COVID hit,
Ah,
and
yes,
then
I
I
see.
went home.
Okay. And as for like living in Dubai, what is that like?
It was a lot of fun. A lot of people asked me, like, are worried, like, are you okay going to Dubai? And how was it for a woman? And it was a great experience. I never felt uncomfortable at any time. The cast there, we all got very close, and it was a very multicultural, international cast. So, like, my best friend was from Spain, my other best friend was from France, and there's a great food scene in Dubai. It is expensive, but it was the most like luxurious lifestyle. But I did find it was a bit of a superficial, artificial city planted right in the middle of the desert, which is funny because I went to Vegas after that. So
Okay.
desert cities have been, I guess, my thing now.
Well, good segue. So let's talk about that. So this is, I guess you go to Vegas for so do you apply to Cirque du Soleil? You send them your reel, so to speak?
I had applied to Cirque. Cirque has always been the dream, and I've been applying over the years, and there were some other shows that I never auditioned for them, but they would ask for, sometimes if they are looking for a specific role, they'll ask you to send us this trick, this trick, this trick, and then they'll see if you can do those tricks and they'll put you in. There's one for Corteo. I had tried for O before the pandemic, and then they ended up hiring someone local just because, again, visas are always an issue. And then when COVID hit, I moved back home to Toronto and I thought I was going to give up performing, actually. I was back with my family. I'd been away for 10 years. It was so nice to be home. People are getting married. You miss the holidays and you miss big family events when you're away because you don't necessarily get to, even in Club Med, you work the holidays in big shows. They tell you when your vacation is. So if it's a friend's wedding, you can't normally just leave the show and go away. So I was happy to go home. And then I ended up going back to school during COVID to go back into my third year of university. And just when I had started to settle down in Toronto and accept, what, I think I'm happy, going back to school and living this life without circus. Of course, I get a phone call and I actually didn't know the number that was calling me. It was a Montreal number. And I was thinking, who could be calling me from Montreal? And I answered a little bit confused. I was like, hello? Like, hi, is this Elisa? I'm like, yeah. This is so and so from Cirque du Soleil. I was wondering if you're interested in and all of a sudden everything was like, okay, uh, forget that. I'm going right back into it. Retired life, no way. And it was was just about to open after the pandemic. And I arrived in Vegas the day that they had reopened. And it was another very quick turnaround, probably a 3 week or 2 week again hiring. And I was there. And it happened so quickly. I was almost in shock, I had serious imposter syndrome going to Cirque, especially after not training for a year. Well, I mean, you stay in shape, but circus training, all of a sudden this is like the biggest dream job. And I just spent 1 year of COVID. So
For our listeners who maybe have not seen O, do you tell them what a bateau flyer is?
right. So O is again another Franco Dragone show from when he was with Cirque. This show has been in Vegas for about 27 years, I believe, and it's a water show. So huge pool with lifts that move up and down. We have divers, and I was in an act called Bateau, where it's this giant metal structure above the pool, and we're basically pirates. These people left like out at sea that are struggling, and the huge metal structure, we actually swing it ourselves by pushing it, and this whole giant boat is swinging over the water, and we do fixed cradle on a swinging ship. And I don't know if I explained it properly, but just imagine this giant metal ship above a pool and we're flipping above the pool. So if you do miss, you end up in the pool and you can't get back up.
And does that happen?
Oh, yes. I
Okay.
mean, not very often, but when it does, sometimes you can hide a mistake, but if you miss, everyone sees you falling into the water and splashing, and they're not always the most graceful falls either. Like I've belly flopped in the middle of a show, and
And what did they tell you to do? Do you remain in the pool or do you slink off
well,
to the okay?
this is the embarrassing part is what you wish you could do is just quietly swim off, but we have these lifts on stage, so we have to swim to a lift and we basically climb on it, and we're just there on stage and we're meant to look up at the rest of the act.
Oh
So
no.
we have to now like lie down on the stage and everyone can see you and just watch the rest of the act. And then at the very end, when we jump, everyone jumps off the boat, we jump back in the water and bow.
Okay.
So it's pretty we call it the lift of shame because you're just staring at everyone else.
Okay, so there's really incentive not to fall off that boat.
Yes.
Okay. And how long roughly were you at that show?
From 2021 to 2024.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. So I guess that was probably the big highlight. That was your dream, and you got it,
That was
right?
the cherry on top. And that was the perfect place to then retire, move back home. But yeah, from Club Med in 2010 up to Vegas in 2024, I had a pretty good run and very eclectic all over. So yeah,
Did you send me any photos from your time in Cirque du Soleil, or could you?
possibly. I
So,
will. Yeah, I'll
so
send
our
some zebra
yeah,
photos or some bateau photos.
yeah. So our listeners can go over to the My First Season Facebook page and then see all Elisa's your wonderful photos. That would be awesome if you could find.
For sure.
All right, let's go back to some Club Med. Did you work with anyone that you would like to mention, like people you enjoyed working with? We call this part of the podcast shout outs.
Shout outs. Oh, there's so many. And like I wrote a list, but I know even when I know I'll still miss someone, but my first season would not have been able to do it without Millie, who was the other circus geo, like my big sister. And she was in all this, she was like my inspiration. And then our other friend Gael. And actually both of them came out to visit me in Vegas, which was really special. And then there was Manny, who was my circus partner, and him and I did everything together and best partner ever. And then there was Ashley Minkus, who's also her sister was a Geo as well, Britt. I worked with Britt, I believe, in Turks. And then there was my friend who I just had lunch with yesterday, actually, Miguel, who was the pastry chef in Turks. And we worked together in Punta Cana as well. He was my best friend when I would do wine sales in Turks. They would make me, that was one of the hardest jobs I think I've ever done is trying to sell wine in an all inclusive resort.
Okay,
Um,
yeah, because this I'm not familiar with. So do you go around the restaurant with like a cart or something?
Basically, I had to stand and this was my least favorite part of the bartending job. And I had to stand at the entrance of the restaurant with the wine menu. And as people would come in, try and offer them wine or champagne and then walk around to the tables. But honestly, no one wants to buy wine when it's all included. So I would just go hang out with Miguel at the pastry at the dessert table, and he would just give me plates of dessert all the time. So that was my fun moment of wine selling. And then there was Ronnie and Sean from my first season sailing. Ronnie was from Dominican as well, and my friend Manny was from Dominican. So we would always venture out of Punta Cana. Sometimes when we'd have a break and we'd go get local food, and they'd show me all the local beer and chicken, and that was a great experience. And then from a child, Big J, Jason Reed, he was one of my brother's geos in the mini club. My whole family still stays in touch with them, and he's in Ottawa.
Yeah, shout out Jason. Also
Yeah.
a guest on the podcast. Yeah, Jason
Oh,
Reed.
I have to listen to his podcast then.
Yeah, I'll send
And
it
then
to you.
another one, Julia, who was my one of my really good friends in Punta Cana, Julia Fitzgerald. And then
Oh
from
yes, Julie.
Turks,
Yeah,
yeah,
also a guest.
right? I kind of went through the list. I was trying to find some people I actually worked with, but she was my day off buddy. In Turks and Caicos, I had my two French friends, Sauzam, who worked at the boutique, and Mark, who was in finance. And we would always have day off adventures together, which was so much fun. And yeah, I'm probably missing people, but
That's okay. I mean, it's hard to name
there's
everyone,
on
but
every season you meet so many
yeah,
great people. You have so many best friends. It's just nice now that we like to stay in touch with everyone. And when you travel, that's the beauty of Club Med, which to this day you can travel anywhere in the world and find either a GM that you really bonded with or a GO. So going to different cities is always exciting because you probably know a local there that you worked with or met at some point in your circus career, GO Club Med career.
is there anything you miss about working at Club Med?
I don't think I could do it nowadays. I don't miss all the hours, the 1 day a week, but I miss speaking different languages and being around so many people from all over the world. That was, and the fun thing about Club Med is that everyone that comes on vacation is happy. So you're working and being around, surrounded by people who are trying to have a good time and want to have a good time. And you're dancing every day. Like it's tiring, but at the end of the day, everyone's happy,
Exactly.
right? Like
Yes.
that's quite nice.
I'm guessing you also don't miss like not having to do dishes too. Like there's that reality, right? Like, okay, I have to cook now, I have to do
Great.
dishes. Where's the buffet?
Yeah, I'll miss that for sure. That was always fun. And also I picked up wake surfing in Punta Cana,
Oh, really?
which was yeah. No, wake surfing, not wake surfing, wind. Oh, what am I going to say right now?
Was it windsurfing or kite surfing?
Windsurfing. I picked up windsurfing.
Okay.
We had actually one day towed ourselves behind the rescue boat and we did wake surf once. I don't think that was allowed, but we did do that in Punta Cana. But windsurfing was my newfound sport. So just things like that, picking up these sports and having the opportunity to try so many different things on your free time. Not that there was much of that, but
I have a thing in my note. I forgot to ask you about Bob Christians. Is it true that Bob sold your family a rig?
that is true. Back in the day, Club Med, Circus, Flying Trapeze, is that the GMs were actually allowed to fly out of lines. I think they had to sign a waiver, but both my parents ended up flying out of lines and catching out of lines in Club Med. And so after that, we moved to a farm. We used to live in the city in Toronto, but then we moved up to the country and had a big farm. And my dad ended up buying a trapeze from Bob Christians and setting it up basically in a field. And that was up from, I think, 2001 up until this year when I sadly took it down. Yeah, I think we were maybe one of the only families in Canada to have a flying trapeze at their house.
Yeah, I think you are. I mean, as far as this podcast is concerned. And
Lots of birthday parties up here.
well, no, it must have been a heck of a good time, right? I mean, having a rig right on your
Oh, it was
land.
awesome. I flew out of lines for the first time at my house, which is pretty cool.
Did your parents make you sign a waiver? Okay.
No, maybe they should have actually in hindsight.
Well, speaking of your parents, you have a funny story about when your parents came to visit you for the first time as a geo, right?
Oh, yeah. So the very first time, well, not the very first time, but once I went to Punta Cana, I'd been settled in. My best friend, who I mentioned, Millie, she was the main dancer in all the shows. But the week my parents came to visit for the first time, she had gone on vacation. So Fernando, the choreographer, is like, okay, Lisa, you're doing all these acts. I'm like, okay, sure. And I learned them all. But the night they arrived was that day. Sorry, that doesn't make sense. The day they arrived was the show that I just went into. And the first act in the show is a French number where you have this massive feathery headpiece and this pretty little bikini top and this blue sequin bottom. And you walk onto the stage, and my parents are there for the first time, like, oh, our daughter's at Club Med, and we're so excited. And you walk onto stage with this big costume on, you turn around, and the costume is this thong. And it was like the most revealing thing ever. And that was the first thing that my parents saw me do when they came to visit me at Punta Cana. Like, not all the circus that I've been training, non exciting like trapeze show is it was just this French number where I walk on stage, turn around, and I have like the most exposing costume on ever. But luckily they know Club Med and they weren't it was
They,
funny, but
they didn't tease you too bad, I'm guessing, right?
no, it was fine. Then the next day we did a circus show and it was all okay.
We're gonna wear leotards, right? In this one? Okay.
Yeah, it's Club Med though. The costumes, you never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm
But
looking at your whole timeline here, your resume and whatnot. You live quite the incredible life. I mean, with all the experience you had. And speaking about Club Med, going from GM to Geo, are you glad for the experience?
100%. I think it was the best thing I could have done. I think it builds character. It makes you able to, I think, be adaptable, adjust to change, work hard, like get ready. Like you get ready from you finish trapeze and training in the daytime, you're sweaty and gross. You have to go back to your room and be at the bar in like 20 minutes. You're able to change and do a complete makeover in 20 minutes, shower, do your hair, put the dress code on, do your makeup, and run out. Like, if you can do Club Med, like, nothing was as hard as Club Med in a way. It just prepares you, I think, for life in all aspects, like just being able to talk to people, the discipline for yourself, going out all night and then having to show up and be accountable the next morning, working 6 days a week, the longest hours ever. Like, Club Med is fun, but it's a lot of work. And I think once you can do Club Med, you can do anything.
Yeah, exactly. So if you were hiring someone and saw Club Med on their resume, you'd probably take them, right? Like I would.
100%.
Yeah, they know hard work for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa, this has been so great of you to share your amazing story with us here today. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me. It's been so much fun. It's nice to relive some of the old memories.
Yeah, and speaking of those memories, everyone, please again make sure you head over to the My First Season Facebook page to see all Elisa's amazing photos and memories. And thank you once again, Elisa. It's been very great of you to do this.
Thanks so much.
All right, everyone. That was the amazing Elisa Tauro, and we'll see you all next week. Bye. Say bye, Elisa.
Bye.